Okay, I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item, we're going to have to recess into executive session. Mr. Shields?
I will make a motion to enter an executive session at about 5:59 PM for the purpose of preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
I'll second that.
Well, first, clerk calls the roll. Please call the roll.
Dan?
Yes.
Gilbert?
Yes.
Shields?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Simpson? Rose?
Yes.
Colasar?
Yes.
Motion passed.
We'll be coming back, but we will not be taking any action with respect to the items discussed in executive session, but we'll continue the agenda thereafter. We'll be gone 5 to 10 minutes.
I will make a motion to come out of executive session at 6:26.
Second.
Any discussion? I don't think we can vote on it. All in favor? Aye. All right, the meeting's back in session. Item number 2 is assignment for request for council action. We have a few for finance. We have 13-221 budget amendments, 13-222 $500 carryover for flexible spending accounts, 13-223 authorizing payment over $3,000, 13-224 wildlife hazard assessment from Municipal Airport, 13-225 contract with Cunningham Associates, Lake Road, Phase 2, 13-226 amending ordinance 188-12 Ray Mellert /pad, 13-227 2004 Care Healthcare Renewal, United Healthcare amending 13301, 13-228 purchase of 2014 police interceptors for police department, and 13-229 amending ordinance 10213 reduced transfer by $221,000 from 513 to 546 water cap. We're going to move around on the agenda just a little bit. We're going to go to item 12 since the Moms Group Playground people for Greenwood Park are here. So we'll go to 13-217. And I think Mr. Shields held a meeting, so Mr. Shields?
We did. We had a public properties meeting last Thursday. Mike, do you want to do the overall, and then I'll fill in?
Sure. Since 2009, the Moms Group has been collecting money towards purchasing some playground equipment for Fred Greenwood. The existing structure, which we saw pictures of during the public properties meeting, and is failing, and we can't just order new parts for it. It's a lot of rust. They've had injuries on that unit. So just a real good program that they put together for collecting for this. ZLA just found out too that they're collecting for next year to even possibly put in and pay for a swing set in addition to what we're doing here now. So they'll add a swing set to the area too. This price here includes both fixtures, a smaller 2 to 5/8 range age group called the Super Scoop, and then the larger Desert Oasis. We spoke to several references now in regards to these products and found out they're excellent. One of them was the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Fort Delaware, Ohio, which said they even went into extremes of measuring the units and making sure the thickness was quality and everything else. And they said they've been in since 2009, paid for from the stimulus grant, and excellent product. Outside of that, I want to thank Jim for the donation from Award 4 for the what was it, open fund carry? What was that for?
Open space.
Yeah, thank you for that. That works out great because it helps us too with the existing when we need to put the mulch in next year.
I think the great thing to point out is that we're basically getting this for about half price because they have these matching funds. So we're getting. Did we check on the labor yet? I know that was one of the questions on the whether or not to include the 4,500 or. I'll break this one.
That was the question for him.
Because I know that was we budgeted up to 4,500 for 3 days supervision.
Yes, they said that would be plenty, actually. If you're just talking about the MTC quote, yeah, that's plenty. And they said, 3 is the high estimate for that when you have, depending on how many volunteers you have. The Moms Group says they probably have 30 husbands. Plus, if we use Home Depot and Kohl's, if their volunteers come through too, it's more than enough. Both crews usually are 4 people, 2 crews. This is going to be 1 supervisor with as many people as we need.
So we've got 3 days of supervision, but we're not sure we'll need that based on the number of people. We will refund $6,260.48 to the Moms Club. They'll pay for the smaller, the younger age playground equipment, and then the city will use $7,979.48 from Ward 4 open space, and the rest will come from Parks carryover then to fund this. It'll be very nice. It will put new borders around it. We'll have new mulch in we get it installed, and it will really clean up that park and make for a very, very nice playground equipment for that neighborhood and the Moms Club and anybody else who wants to come over there to use the splash pad. So excited how well this all came together. Thanks for all your work on it too.
Thank you.
Mark?
Did I hear the existing equipment cannot be reused anywhere? Okay.
Right, yeah, they'd have to cut it apart as
Right.
it is.
And it is in pretty bad shape. I did go over and take a look at it.
I'd just like to say, I mean, these are the kind of efforts we like, where they're collaborative efforts between community members and council. And Mike, I like your offering to carry forward to cover the additional costs. That's always helpful. But I think it's going to be a good project for Ward 4. A lot of people attend that park, so I think it's.
And I can't thank the Moms Club enough for finding this company that had these matching dollars too. That was a huge help, so.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thanks again for your efforts. You're welcome to stay if you like, because it's very exciting.
And we will-
Nobody bought
You're gonna go
that.
out with yours.
That's what I figured.
But if anybody asks, you were here the whole evening. so.
Okay, we have 13-221, going back up to item number 3, budget amendments. This is a finance 2013-03059, general purpose capital land acquisition. I guess it's pretty self-explanatory.
This is the money for the Masonic.
Even though we're not obligated to purchase, we're just entering into a purchase agreement. We have to allocate the funds out of the general purpose capital in case the due diligence and the architectural reviews come back favorably.
And we'll create an encumbrance that will be available. This fund, by the way, is the general purpose capital fund. We have a balance of over $5 million in it.
Any questions?
Move to approve?
Second. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next one is the civil service testing advertising expenses, is 2013-057.
Lorraine asked me to address this. She had more testing this year than she had budgeted for, and she's asking to budget the money that she brought in from selling the applications. It's really a wash since it was money she brought.
New number. She's good.
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, all opposed, motion carries. Next item we have is 13-222, $500 carryover for flexible spending accounts.
I will explain this pretty briefly. It's not something that we or our carrier have changed. It's something the Treasury Department changed, and we have to pass this to follow along with it. The flexible spending accounts are something we offer to our employees, where they can put money away on a pre-tax basis to use for their co-pays and their deductibles and so on with the health insurance. The biggest problem with it is, up until now, there's been no carryover allowed. So if you put any money away in there, it's a use it or lose it. And that makes it difficult for people to put any money in there unless they absolutely know what they're gonna spend and can budget it exactly. The feds have loosened up on their rules, so now they're allowing up to a $500 carryover. I'm asking that we allow a $500 carryover, but it requires a change in the agreement here, so that's why I need your approval for it.
I have a question. If we do it on the 9th with the emergency clause, that'll take effect for the 13 funds?
Well, I think so, but the way this reads, it says effective in plan year 2014, but from what he told us, it sounded like you could carry 2013 funds into 2014, but I'm gonna have to double check on
Yeah,
that.
'cause I didn't.
It's more important for the people, obviously, if you have money in there in 13, you wanna carry it to 14, you need to know that answer. If we can, we will, but I don't know that the Treasury is
yeah.
gonna allow us to do
It
that.
says under the second one, it says effective immediately, employers that offer FSA programs that do not include a grace period will have the option of allowing employees to roll over 500 for 2013.
Problem is, we allow a grace period, which most people do, because that's our way of getting around this before this rollover. You can use it anytime up until, I think it's April 15th, so that if you put money away in this plan over the course of 2013, you can use it in January, February, March of 14. That was our way around it before they had this. we would love to replace it with this, but it doesn't sound like we can change the 13, and like I said, I'm not 100% clear on that, it doesn't sound like we can. But we wanted to have this in effect, and we told people that it was pending before council when we did the signups for 2014, for people. And the idea is that when you sign up for it, you need to know, is there a grace period, can I carry over, you know, where's this money gonna go? And we told people it was pending before council that if you didn't approve it, they could always go back and undo their contribution, but I think people looked at it that way. We're hoping to get more participation. It's good for the employees because it saves them a little bit of money. It's good for us too because it actually saves us some Medicare tax on the amount that they contribute because it's a pre-tax amount.
I think what you're gonna find, Keith, is that 2013, you will continue to have a grace period, but starting with the 2014 is when you'll have the $500.
I think that's how it's gonna work. I agree that.
Yeah, this guy told us when we were signing up, that the guy that was in charge of it, that if council passed it and it took effect before the end of 13, then people could get the 500.
Doesn't seem like that's the case.
No, I didn't know about this grace period thing that later.
Yeah,
trumped
see,
it.
that's
I-
what I wonder if you.
And I thought
realize
that's
that
what he said too, but then when I looked at this again, I was like, this doesn't say that. This says
Because if you have a
14
grace
plan.
period, you can't have the 500 under the
Yeah.
new rules, so.
Right.
The 500 seems more useful than the grace period, because if you have the grace period, you still only have, 15, 16 months to spend it. If you have the $500, you can, at a minimum, you can put $500 in the thing the first year and, okay, see how it works. And then we're gonna be looking to go to debit cards with this, which will make it more convenient for people, that you go to the doctor, you pay your copay, you just pay with a debit card right there, instead of the old way, you had to pay it and then keep the receipt, and turn it in and mail it, and, it's gonna be a lot more convenient for people to just take a debit card and go.
So I guess we can do the emergency clause just in case.
Okay, move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second with the emergency clause.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 13-223, authorizing payment greater than $3,000.
This one was from that, sorry, I'm getting what it is. Oh, this was from the CHIP grant project. It's been, work's been done. It's being paid for by the feds, but we didn't have the approvals in time, so we gotta have it to you this way.
Question?
Move to approve.
Oh,
I do have a question.
Second first.
second.
All right, discussion.
When it comes to getting these CHIP grants, what is the criteria, Kimberly or John, if you have the answer to that, for qualifying for, in this case, a $7,000 grant to replace a water heater and a furnace?
Do you want me to
There's,
you have to be in, do you want me to do it? Sandy be the one that knows it the best, but it's two ways into it. LMI area, which is low to moderate income area, or the individual meets the standards. So you can get in either way. And then they'll only pay for certain improvements. They won't pay for, the one we get asked about all the time, they won't pay for a hot tub. But if it's necessary for the house, and you're in the right area or in the right income, and you can back that up.
Okay.
If you're in the area, you don't have to meet the income requirements. If you're not, you gotta show them tax returns and all that.
Okay. Well, I don't think that this is an LMI area, this address. That's why I question it.
Yeah, so that way it would have had to be based on.
Income, okay.
Yeah, there
all
are
right.
two ways, so.
Okay, Thank you.
And there's a bid process here for these projects, correct? I mean,
The-
that's what it says in here, but, I'm not a contractor, but $3,100 to replace a water heater seems kind of steep, but
Really speak to me, but we don't, we contracted out to that,
CT
firm,
consultant.
CT, that does the whole thing, we don't, in here.
Oh, I know, but still, it is pretty steep.
Unless
Hopefully
you put in
nobody's,
one of
triple.
those-
Yeah, easy.
Unless you're putting in one of those Renai water heaters, you're right.
Yeah, for solar.
Yeah. There's too many trees back there for it to be solar.
I mean, I don't know if there's a check process, if we have authority to even do that.
well, it says in there, there's a bid process, but maybe there's limited bids coming in, but, I just saw the dollar amounts and it just seems like somebody's taking, not to speculate, but somebody's taking advantage of something here.
The smell test indicates that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring it up, so.
Remember, it's federal money.
Money's
No,
money,
it's
it
our
doesn't
money.
matter.
No, it's our
I'm
money.
not-
It's
I'm
not
not-
federal money. We put the money in the federal government.
No, that's not what, that wasn't what I was saying. What I said is federal projects, where I was going with that was federal projects always cost more money because there's a lot of hoops you gotta jump through and strings you gotta pull where these individual contractors have to meet those federal requirements.
Well, and they probably have prevailing wage requirements too, because it is federal.
It's
so.
still $3,100.
Yeah.
Anyhow, sorry.
I did this for $750 in my house. So,
All right, we had a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion
Aye.
carries. Oh, one
I oppose.
one opposed.
This, I don't know if you, back, it takes a while to get back there, but it's actually 3,100 for a water heater and 3,850 for a furnace, for a
Right.
total of 6,950.
Right.
Is
Right.
that what we're talking about? I
Right,
thought you
that's
said
right.
$7,000 for a water heater.
No,
No,
3,100
for water heater.
$7,000.
Did you
I
have
don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
exactly.
what
That's a heck
direct
of a
offense.
Because
Direct offense.
it cost me $750 to
Yeah, I
go
have
to my
a,
house.
it cost me $1,000. I had a 75 gallon.
Okay, I had a 50-gallon.
Jim?
John's got a four-car garage now.
Yes, you made a motion, Mark seconded, prior to the discussion.
I made a
But it-
motion, then Paul wanted to talk, and John made Mark second it first.
So we can't talk in front of, Okay, now we're moving to 13-224, wildlife hazard assessment at the airport. This is a good one. Mr. Huber?
The FAA requires periodically a wildlife assessment. The directive came from them that we should this year complete this assessment. The grant will pay for 90%, we'll be responsible for 10%. It'll be part of our allotted projects. Where we receive $150,000 a year from the FAA. We were advised that we do not have a choice in this. I suggested the possibility of using 30-06. That was disapproved. And so here we are.
So how long does this, once the assessment's completed, how long will it last or be viable?
Well, every 10 to 15 years, apparently, they want this assessment completed. It has to do with the possibility of animals coming to the path of an airplane. They pay a fair bit of attention to birds. And what water is located that might attract birds or other wildlife. Deer and birds being two of the primary issues.
How do you hit a deer with an airplane?
Running across the runway, but
Well, I actually have a good friend who was landing at Wadsworth, and 4 deer just bolted from one side across the other and actually hit the air. So it happens.
They're reindeer built. That's just one of the drawbacks, you know, if you're wealthy enough to have an airplane, I guess you gotta deal with the insurance for that kind of stuff.
I have a question with the hangars that
Thanks.
were recently approved out there. Wasn't the Medina Flight Services required to put in some sort of detention basin out there for rainwater collection? And isn't that just going to say, here geese, come?
Well, the detention basin actually has to have an engineered drainage built into it.
So it
that it's
won't-
not holding water for a very long period of
Oh,
time.
okay, all right, good.
And actually, the FAA looks at the calculations on that water drainage, and they asked me for those about 4 weeks ago.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
I just think $40,000 is an awful lot of money, and I know we have no control, but it gets back to this wasting federal funds, but go ahead.
It's kind of like the hot water tank.
I'd like to see who's going to count these animals.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Huber. 13-225, contract with Cunningham Lake Road Phase 2. Mr. Patton.
This is for our next large project in the western industrial area. This will be to reconstruct Lake Road from Lafayette to West Smith. We went through the required selection process. We had 12 consultants submit qualification statements. We narrowed it down, found that 2 were equally qualified, and asked them each to submit a price proposal. Based on that, we're recommending Cunningham and Associates for this work.
Any questions?
I have one, sir. What was the difference between Cunningham and number 2?
Number 2 is around $170,000, about $21,000.
All right, thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item we have is 13-226, amending ordinance 188-12, Ray Mellert splash pad. Who is this one? Pat.
This, the original work for this project did not include a couple items. Specifically, some sidewalk reconstruction that we had some grant monies for, the CDBG grant, and also the providing electrical service to the project was not in the contractor's scope. Earlier in July, the Board of Control approved these as change orders. We did not at that time, however, recognize that we needed to come back and modify the ordinance to reflect those.
And the funds are coming from
From the grant.
the CDPG revaluation.
Move to approve.
Second.
And of course, the splash pad's not in use right now. Maybe it is.
Not today.
Not today?
It makes snow.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 13-227, 2014 healthcare renewal, amending codified ordinance 13301. Mayor?
In your packets are revised renewal plans for United Healthcare. They've agreed to drop their proposal from 41% that it was originally to 28%, and then offer another 2% reduction if the city joins the MEC Health and Wellness Alliance. You get a 1% automatically by joining, and another 1% if you have participating members between 51 and 500. So we meet that second threshold as well, so the 28% would become 26% by staying with the same healthcare provider that we have now, as opposed to changing to another provider and running the risk of doctors and providers not being on the list. So it's our recommendation that we renew with United Healthcare, and we're also hoping that we can see some other premium reductions by revising the healthcare plan through the collective bargaining process.
Discussion?
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second with emergency clause.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We had a discussion last in executive session regarding possibly having to change our different healthcare provider to get the same percentage of benefits as now we receive from our current healthcare provider.
Yes, sir.
And if we can in any way make any headway, which I believe we should be able to make some, that 26% could be reduced a little bit further.
Yes, sir.
Which helps this year, but not necessarily future years, but kind of gives you a barometer of where we're going to be when we have to discuss budgets next week. We can see what we have to do with the current budgets to make sure that we keep within our plan in 5 years from now, because we know it's going to go up, but hopefully, it won't be 20% or more every year. Could be. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 13-228, purchase of two 2014 police interceptors for the police department. Chief?
Mr. President, this is essentially the same order that you all approved in March of this year for 3 vehicles. We just received those week before last. So what we're trying to do is get in under the wire for surplus money in 2013 and pick up 2 which we would expect to get, I want to say August to October of next year. So,
The other thing we're trying to do is, you made the recommendation, Mr. Coyne, to try to get in the fall by, so we're not always against that build-out deadline in the early spring. So by doing this, we have this 1 year where we're going to have multiple purchases, but then every fall, maybe even earlier than this, October, November, we'll start looking at these and trying to get the order for the year. So it's just one time we have the double order, and then it should get back to 2 to 3 cars a year and stay that way forever.
Yeah, I think we need to stay on a pattern of, I think, staggered,
Yes, sir.
when you never did 3 cars a year,
Right.
every year, and.
That's our hope, that this threw us off by missing the build-out deadline and then getting them so late in the year, and the maintenance problems that go along with it, but we'll get back on the right track.
Now, is the goal still to do all SUVs, or are we gonna have a mixture of SUVs and cruisers?
well, the police department's preference would be to stay with the SUV. It has really worked out very well, and it's popular with the officers. It hauls the equipment. It's been a good utility vehicle. Not to reinvent the whole wheel again, but if we go back to sedans, the current sedans are really small for the average officer, let alone the larger officer. So
From the, I've talked to a number of the staff as well, and, you know, they're very pleased with this, pleased with the handling, pleased with the room, with all the equipment that we have in the vehicles now. And as you know, Ford's only doing the all-wheel drive, but unusual, as you know, at the last council meeting, I was away on vacation and noticed that in St. Thomas and St. Martin, they have Ford Explorers on the islands. It doesn't snow down there. So they're using them because of the size of the vehicle, because of the handling of the vehicle and the equipment that they have to haul.
But if we implement a wellness program, everybody will be getting smaller, so we might have to go to smart cars.
It's not the officers.
I don't think so.
only if you want to start chopping off legs.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second.
Yep, Mark.
Chief, so with these two, this will give us, when they come in, this will give us 7, is that correct?
Yeah.
SUVs? Out of, what's our total fleet, 13?
I
12?
got that right here for you. There's 17 marked vehicles in the fleet. And by marked, I mean, light bar and the police markings, the reflective markings. Of those 17, I've broken them down. The front line is 100,000 miles or less, which has been what we've been shooting to get to for reliability, repair costs, wear and tear. I also listed here the equipment that's in that vehicle. You'll see we have, out of 9 vehicles in the frontline fleet, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 that are 92,000 plus in mileage, which means that by the time these 2 come in, all of those will be over 100,000. The next category is the contract vehicles, and we're obligated to supply a vehicle with the school SROs. And if you'll notice, there's a lighter package in there. We don't put the cameras in there, we don't put the computer, that kind of high value stuff. And we also took that 2005 vehicle is an old dog car that by using it in a limited fashion, we're still getting use out of it. And then if you look at the last page, the limited duty vehicles, that's the ones that are over 100,000. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are well over 100,000 miles. Now, these miles were as of October of this year. So like when we get into an event like we had Friday and Saturday, we had 15 vehicles on the road for that event, and including the 4 for the patrol. So it doesn't leave you much room. So our thought is, rather than get rid of these, which we would have done in the past, and get $1,000 or $2,000, we'd rather keep them in this limited capacity and be able to expand when you have parades and events for the traffic control. So that's what we're doing. So this purchase, to go back to the original question, will put us, we're still going to end up with 2 vehicles well over 100,000 miles in frontline service.
What's the useful life now? Because I know, at least for vehicles that we drive, I guess, 200,000 is going to be pretty common.
What'd you say, 200,000?
I think with the vehicles we're making nowadays, they're getting a little bit more, especially with your vehicles. I
Police
mean,
car,
it's-
the mileage is a lot rougher for them, because it's a lot of
Stop.
idle time, it's rough starts, rough stops.
And you know, we try to keep it so no car is on the road 24 hours a day. So usually, every car will be used 2 shifts and sit for a shift. That extends the life out. You know, I think you can see by the list here, you know, we can get, we're still getting good service out of 110, 108, 121,000, but you can't depend on those day to day. And
I was just wondering if they're building them better, where they're gonna last longer. Because I know 30 years ago, you would never have a car with this type of mileage on it.
well, I think what we're seeing is, and these are relatively new vehicles when you look at 07, 08, 09, but the mileage is up there. And what we see is the suspension systems, because, you know, they're jumping curbs, they're stopping and going, and hard turns, that kind of thing. And then we see the other thing is the heater units, the engines themselves. So it's a real crapshoot over 100,000. Now, you may be able to go to 150,000 on a vehicle without a major repair. But if you notice, Unit 94, which is a 2009, 95,000, that's its 3rd engine. And the first replacement was under warranty, and less than 20,000 miles later, we had to put a 3rd engine in it. And it wasn't, I don't know whether they had a problem or whether we had a problem, but that's the only one we've seen that on. But that's what you start getting into when you get up in that 100,000 range. And when we lose a car, as you're seeing now, we can't just go out on a Saturday and buy one. And, you know, we lose a couple cars from an accident, another one from a blown engine. All of a sudden, we don't have enough to do business. So that's what we're trying to do.
I just think, in answer to your question, John, yes, with an asterisk next to it, it all depends on maintenance and how it was driven and the like. But yeah, we could probably get maybe up to 150,000 going forward, but that would be pushing it.
Well, I think in years come, I think we're gonna find that, this is my personal opinion, as you've seen through the years, 50,000 used to be a lot. Now we're moving up, and I think we'll get to a point where 200's more,
Yeah, but not anytime.
maybe. They're getting better with technology,
Yeah, but,
synthetic oil,
BMWs and Lexus.
maybe.
yeah,
Unless it's on that one patrol car, it's the same, if we gotta see if it's the same patrol driver, if they switch drivers, or if it's the same consistent driver.
those
You
are
never
all
know.
accurate.
All right, any other questions?
Good.
I just wanted to clarify that these are going to be equipped essentially the same as the other ones that we ordered
Yeah,
earlier this year?
everything's the
Everything's the
same.
same? Okay.
It'll be the same order, just two more, and that will outfit them all the same. This is the frontline package is the same in all the frontline cars. And then when we move them down into the other categories, we take out the equipment that's salvageable. You know, we can't take a cage out of a Crown Vic and put it into an Explorer. But we will get to the point where when we move an Explorer down the line to, say, an SRO car, we can take the cage out if we want and reuse it.
Thank you.
Chief, can you tell me again the premium roughly that we're paying for the SUV compared to just a sedan?
I think we said before it's around 2,000, 2,100, somewhere in that range.
For like a Dodge, even a Dodge Charger,
We
whatever they are?
we did not price that. The standard here has always been the Ford.
Nothing? No?
Well,
All right.
I made a motion with the emergency
Motion,
clause.
Oh my God, we've been so long. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Last item on the agenda is 13-229, amending ordinance 102-13, reduced transfer by $221,000 from 513 water fund to 546 water capital.
Yes.
Yes. Keith?
Yes, Mr. President, I was asked before this meeting to kind of go over where the water, we borrowed additional funds in 2010 in the water capital fund, and where we are with that, and why we needed part of this transfer. The water capital fund, as a general thing, before any of the refinancing, we've been paying about half of the debt service out of it, and I think it's water capital, so you might ask, well, why don't we pay all the debt service or do a bunch of projects in it? The reason is we only have about $600,000 a year in annual revenue, and our debt service before the refinancings was about $1.3 million a year, so we don't have enough money in there to pay anything but half of the debt service, so that's all we do. Since we did the refinancing, there's 3 major projects that we've taken out of this fund that have depleted those funds. First was the Smith Smoke Rise project, and that was the connection that Patrick did down there for that end of town. We're from the Smith Road line down to the Smoke Rise line. We spent about $340,000 on that during 2012. The next project is one that's currently ongoing, which is the Historic District Water Line project. So far this year, we've paid about $220,000 out of this fund towards that project. There's another $264,000 that is encumbered in purchase orders for that, makes a total of $481,000. The third major project on this, out of this fund, is $161,000 for the South Court tower, which is encumbered. We haven't started the project yet. If you add those 3 projects together, it's about $980,000 out of that $1.2 million, so we've got about $200,000 left. The other thing that we've done in this fund, other than the annual paying of the debt service, which is pretty much a wash, is the last 2 years, 12, well, counting this year, 12 and 13, we have paid off part of the loan, the advance, if you remember, from the general purpose capital fund to this fund. And the auditors, in order to keep carrying that advance, have made us refinance it. So it's a little bit complicated because every year we pay off the entire amount and then we re-borrow a portion. We paid off net about $300,000 a year in 12 and 13, so we paid that down by $600,000 in 12 and 13. And long and short of all that is, we don't have enough money in the water capital fund to do the projects that we were coming in with. That's why we did this transfer. We can do it with just the 555. We don't need the other 221, but we've got to keep the 555, return the 221.
555, I guess I'm confused. Okay, so out of the $1.2 million you just explained, we spent $980,000, we have $200,000 remaining. The $600,000 that we took out in 12 and 13 would leave about, if you take the 200 remaining, would leave $400,000 in the hole, let's say. I guess I'm confused with
From the 1.2?
No, yeah, from the 1.2, only the
Okay.
1.2.
Okay.
So I didn't know, how much do we have in there beyond the 600 before we started 2010? Because we bring 600 a year into it.
Right, at the end of 2010, we had a cash balance of $1.6 million.
Okay, so $1,000,006 cash balance. Does that include or does not include the 1.2?
That includes the 1.2 because the 1.2 was borrowed during 2010.
So we would be, at the end of this year, technically with all this, we'd be at zero.
That's about the size of it, yeah.
So what other
Well, it
projects
won't
are we
be-
doing beyond those three that need to have money in there? Because I guess we brought over 776,000 from operating. And I guess why did we bring over 776,000 from operating? If we take the 1.2, we'd be about zero, so now we're plus 776,000. Correct? Is that right?
That's about right.
So why can't we take all 776 and bring it back to operating?
I have a $400,000 debt service payment due next week, and if you take it all out of there, I won't have enough to pay it. I mean, that's without getting rid of some encumbrances.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out from Pat, you're saying, what other projects do you have that you're taking from this capital account?
The ones that aren't funded yet for 2014,
Well, we're not talking about that, I mean, 2013 and prior. We're not worried about 2014 yet.
I'm still carrying $300,000 in encumbrance on the Fair Road Booster Pump project.
Is that done?
no, that's under contract and they're started.
And is that 300, I mean, is that what the number is, I
I
guess?
think so.
219,
Yeah, it's
seven,
a-
that's what we just went over.
It's 219.7, not 330.
Yeah, I think you guys authorized 300 whatever, and the bids came in at 219.
Oh.
But I'm still carrying the full.
Well, but we could get rid of that.
301.
Yeah, we could get rid of that.
If-
So
if-
There's 80,000.
My concern is I don't
It's
want
actually
to,
107 is the.
I don't want to be doing water rate increases if the operating fund doesn't have enough money to operate. That's my concern.
Say that again?
I don't want to be raising water rates. I mean, some of these projects that Pat does comes out of the 108 account too, because it's a whole project with the roads. So if he has 107,000 in there, so the question really is, we paid 600 back of the 1.2 million we borrowed years and years ago for the water tower for progress. I don't know if we can make that this next year. I don't think we can make another payment on that. We'd have to just keep, I don't know. Because that came out of the general fund, and we were gonna pay it back to the water account. We may not have another 600,000 right now to pay it back, unless you guys wanna raise water rates. You see what I'm saying? Is that correct?
Well, whenever we look at water rates, understand that and this transfer doesn't really have an impact on that, because whenever we look at water rates, we look at the water and water capital funds as a combined entity. Because it's two
Understood.
funds technically for budget purposes, but they're interchangeable funds in that we have more capital expenditures than we can possibly do with the capital fund anyway. So moving money from one to the other is kind of a net zero.
I mean, it's important here because we don't have enough to pay payroll, and I guess the question is how, I'm trying to figure out, I always thought we had a lot of money in there, like a few $1 million, $1.5 million.
Now,
or-
you're getting confused between money and appropriation, though, because you're talking about, because this 221 is going to free up appropriation in the water operations fund. We are not out of cash in the water operations fund. If you, and there's not a cash issue there. If you said, hey, we don't want to undo this transfer, but we're going to appropriate an additional $220,000, that would get us all our bills paid, and we have the $220,000 to appropriate in the water fund. We're not out of money, we're out of appropriation.
Well, I guess
There's a big difference, and the reason I make such a big point out of that is, when you're out of appropriation, you don't need a rate increase, you just need more appropriation.
Right.
You don't need a rate increase to get out of money. And we have money, we don't have appropriation.
Well, I guess, how much money do we have in there as of today, then, how much cash?
Water cap or water operating?
Both.
I didn't get water operating before I came down here.
Oh,
So I don't have an answer to that. I do have the water capital. Current cash balance is $1,786,000, and 729 of that is encumbered. I mentioned for South Court is 160, Fair Road is 300. The Historic District project is 260, and then there's 1,700 in valve, I don't know what that is, but it's really not important, it's only $1,700 out of 700, but that's 729,000 in encumbrances. So that leaves me with $1 million. I gotta point this out though, looking at the cash balance in a fund that makes a debt service payment in November is a little bit dangerous. Remember, we make our debt service payments December 1st.
So you're taking
So,
400
about
out
a
of there.
$400,000 debt service payment that's gotta be made.
So there's $600,000
This week.
cash.
So that's gonna leave me, yeah, when that's, there's 657 is what it actually comes to in what we call unencumbered cash, which is cash that's not already tied up in a purchase order somewhere else. So that's why I can't give this whole 776 back, because I only got 657. If you take the 776 back, I got negative money in the capital fund.
Right.
But understand, when we look at rates, the operating fund has cash. We're short appropriation in the operating fund, which is why when we take the 221 back, because that'll free up the appropriation, we can move.
Then why do we gotta take any money back if the 513 has cash? Why do we take any back? Then we just appropriate in the 513, why are we gonna transfer it back?
It's fine with me.
I guess that's the question, I guess I'm confused. You were in his hand up.
Why, this $1.2 million came from refinancing, correct?
Yeah.
Why are we paying debt service out of that at all? And by what authority is the finance director doing that?
Well, I think what he's saying is every year we take half and half.
Because that was supposed to be for capital, and if we're not doing it, I would think you need to bless that, so to speak.
I understand your point, but I'm more confused if we have 650,000, 57,000 in cash in capital account, and we have enough cash in the operating account, why would we ever need to transfer anything back from capital to operating? Why don't we just appropriate money out of operating? I guess I'm confused. That's what I don't understand.
Well, I mean, the general answer is you'd rather have money in operating than capital, because you can always transfer from operating to capital. You can't transfer from capital to operating. We can in this case because we're undoing a transfer that we did earlier, but as a general thing, I mean, we close out the year and come back in January and say, hey, we want to transfer money from capital to operating, you can't.
Well, I mean,
It doesn't really matter in the sense that the two funds all come out. The reason this is being asked to be undone, the reason we did a transfer from operating to capital is because we needed it in order to get all these projects in. The reason we're transferring part of it back is because we didn't ask for new appropriation in operating when we did that. The 555 was new appropriation in operating. The 221 was taken out of their appropriations in operating that they had then.
Keith, was that carry forward, if I may ask?
That was the carry forward, and they need that. So we're saying we want to
Yes.
reduce that transfer from the 776 to the 555.
When we put this budget together, it was the amount to make it for the whole year, and now we can't make it for the whole year, which means that the amount you appropriated plus the carry forward was fine to make it. When that carry forward went away, it's not enough anymore. That's the problem.
But I guess I'm-
So we need that carry forward.
Well, you need an appropriation. You have plenty, what I'm hearing, and I guess I'd like to know the number, we have plenty of cash in the operating account.
I didn't bring the cash down here, but if you want to appropriate 221,000.
No, but I'm just trying to figure out what that number would be, because that's, in my mind, really dictates rates. Because you need to be solvent. You need to have like maybe half the amount of the budget available to keep the water account going. And that's what concerns me, I guess.
Well, why was the carry forward not appropriated?
It was.
It was appropriated, but he moved it over to capital to spend these other things.
By what authority?
Well, apparently
How
this
does that happen?
Ordinance 10213.
The 10213 does say 776 from water, 513 to 546. However, the requests were dealt with the bond money, because Pat submitted requests in that said, we're gonna do all these projects, it's gonna be paid for by the bond money.
So why are we dealing with carry forward in a bond ordinance?
I don't know the answer to
everybody
that question.
knows what's going on, why is
I-
it not put in an ordinance dealing with carry forward, which is how we normally deal with these things?
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Well, that's
Council,
that's
you're-
problematic for the department head, because they're counting on that carry forward with the appropriation you give them to make it through the year. Now you take that carry forward away, and that's why we're spinning here.
Well, it sounds like a mistake was made. That's what I get. Is that, I mean, a mistake was made in the finance department that took money from the carry forward when it shouldn't have. That's what I'm getting out of it. Is that true or not?
I don't think it's quite that simple. That ordinance says to do that. I don't know,
Well,
now,
we
that
were-
request came from us, and I don't know why that request came from us, but there was some reason for that, and I mean, we don't make up transfer requests for the heck of
Right.
it.
No, I understand.
I don't remember what it was. I don't know if it was you guys, if it was a department, what, you know.
It wouldn't have been
Why?
us, because
We had a project to pay for, and we said, okay, where are we gonna get this money from? And I mean, this was
Well, it says.
6 months ago.
Well,
I
it
don't
says,
know.
according to Pat, it says bond money. That's how he was gonna pay for it, I guess. That's what Pat's saying.
Well, that's his initial request, but then I looked at it and said, hey, we don't have enough bond money here. I mean, you know, because we've spent, again, the 340, the 480, the 160, and the 300.
Well, let's just correct this problem, and then I guess when we do the budgets next week, if you could just give us how much cash and appropriation both are in the water cap and in the water operating, then we could get a feel for, at least I'd feel better to know how much operating is there. Neil, you had a
I
question?
guess I want to ask, does this transfer need to take place here soon so we can continue, so we can get through the year end? Don't we keep?
Right, that's why we're asking for this
We have to
tonight.
take action because.
Oh, we'll do the emergency, no, I'm just saying, we'll take action on this to give you the 221,000, but I want to know
Well,
how
and-
much is in each
and I-
account then.
That's fair.
And I think at the point at which that discussion, I mean, you were talking about the advance, the $300,000 a year on the advance.
Yeah,
We're gonna talk about that in January, because we do that at the beginning of every year. And that's gonna be the time to come in and say, at that point, we're gonna be able to say, okay, here's how we closed the year, how much we brought in, here's how much we spent.
Well, the other thing is when you
Can't
give us
afford to
those
pay
budgets,
this
I think what we talked about a little bit in an email that I sent out was if the healthcare is 26% and whatever number we pick, we're gonna have trouble in 17 and 18.
Well, yeah.
So the question that I was posing to everybody is, you know, we may have to do a cut in the budgets, either A, do another freeze or something, because we cannot survive in 17 and 18 if the healthcare is like this. So we have to, I think it's upon us to give the department heads guidance of how much money they're gonna have. And they're not gonna have, in my mind, the money that we went through these budgets, they're not gonna have that money, because I don't think we're gonna have enough money to do that. So I think we should scale back a little bit in 17, 18, not much, maybe it's 2 or 3%.
Didn't
Back-
we figure 25% for everything?
No, we figured 25 for the first year, or 20, but then it was 8 for the years out from there.
So we
were
those are
talking about
those are
it
gonna
the
go
other day.
out.
The first year was 25.
The first year was high, but then the others were 8.
the others are
Now
gonna be-
we're talking 12, 15, and 18 was what I was asked to prepare, and as soon as we get this healthcare number
Right.
finalized, that's what we're gonna put in.
Right.
And then look at those 3 comparisons.
And we're gonna know that we're gonna be probably under in the general fund and the minimum balance amount in those
Oh,
years.
we're gonna be under the minimum balance in more than just one fund, I mean, so yeah.
So we're gonna have to reduce the budgets. I think that's incumbent upon us to say, you know, hey, department heads and the mayor, you have less money now. If things go as we expect them to go, so we have to alert them, I think our job is to alert them way ahead of time, if you're not gonna have the money you thought you were gonna have in 2017 and 18, you're gonna have less, so start preparing for it.
In terms of actually passing the 2014 budget, it's not gonna create a negative because we,
Well, I don't think it would.
too many, because we
Right.
basically budgeted for, I think,
Assuming
20.
that all these
But, yeah,
assumptions
we'll be
happen,
back in 5
in
years.
but we're in a little bit more rough shape than we thought we would be in 17 and 18. I think we're gonna be fine in 14 and 15. I think in 17 and 18, we have to start adjusting today, and in 19, I mean, in order to make it work. So just something to think about in the next week, because we're gonna get these numbers back, and we're gonna have to make a decision. But in the meantime,
Okay, Nino, I heard you say something about the emergency clause. It wasn't requested with the emergency clause there.
I think he wants to.
I might defer to Keith, but I think, I mean,
Yeah.
payroll and the commitments that we have for the next couple of weeks, I think we need
We
to,
did-
something has to happen rather
So
than
he
wait.
can bring it.
Yeah, I need it to take effect this year, so I do need it.
All right, move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second with emergency clause.
That's 221,000 now, then in January, we'll look at it, get the numbers, or even when you do the budgets, if they can bring us those cash and.
Yeah, you're gonna have that when we're doing that, so,
So anybody else have any questions?
Is this going to council and they're
No.
gonna?
no. That's, if it were, I wouldn't need the emergency clause, and that was, I guess, the thinking why I didn't put it in.
Yeah, but I think we're in the red right now. We've got a payroll between now and the 9th.
I understand, but that's.
If I have a pending thing in finance, it's not gonna, that's not gonna.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Anything else to come in for finance? Meeting adjourned.